That's just wild.
Wyatt Moss. Wyatt Moss. David Wyatt Moss.
Hi, my name is Becca, and I am new to YouTube. Welcome to my kitchen. Right here is literally where I planned almost everything for my film that I made, Run for Your Life, about Wyatt Moss. In 2024, Wyatt ran a marathon in every single state. So that's 26.2 miles for those that don't know, but he ran a marathon in every state in 1 year, which is absolutely insane. So I found Wyatt when he had about 5,000 to 10,000 followers on Instagram. And his personality was just one of those that you just feel like you're best friends just watching him in his videos. So I found out he was based in Atlanta as well. And I pitched the film idea to him. I basically cold DM'd him and asked if he'd be willing to talk about making a documentary. So a few days later, he got back with me and we started talking about it. And I wanted to tell this story from more of a human emotional perspective of like, who is Wyatt Moss? You know, what is it that makes him do what he's doing, this challenge? Because he's just randomly running all of these marathons. So this was also when I first heard about his Nana, which was a big part of running the 50 states. Well, she was a big part of finishing, I suppose. So Wyatt had a plan at the time that I started talking to him to complete both of their 50 states visits at the same time. So she had also been to 49 states, and he was going to take her to Hawaii for the very last marathon. And so I wanted to implement her into the film as well. So that was kind of my first pitch to him out of nowhere. And he loved the idea. So we started going for it. But the big kicker in all of this was that I was 7 months pregnant at the time. And I was asking a marathoner to make a running film when I was 7 months pregnant. So that was a bit strange, but I planned to make it over a much longer period of time than it ended up being, but I'll get back to that later. Oh, and did I mention that we bought our house and we renovated our house and we moved into our house and I had the baby all at the same time? Yeah, my husband thought I was pretty insane. So, but you know, it's okay. So working with Wyatt as he ran a marathon or two every weekend was a bit complicated, but it gave me a lot of time for pre-production. So during pre-production, I spent as much time as possible at my iMac right here in my kitchen while I was making dinner. I would be making shot lists. I would find frames that I liked online. I would find music, and I planned everything in Milanote, for those that know what Milanote is. But I stood literally right here for hours planning the film. So anytime I woke up in the middle of the night, which happened a lot as a pregnant woman, but and if I couldn't sleep, and I would like write out another idea, or I would think of another scene that needed to go into the film to make the story happen. So I would make notes on my phone and I would stay up and plan the film all night, which is very odd, but I was obsessed. So I used the free version of Milanote and on my nice big screen, and I had to take screenshots of all of my boards just to not run out of space. I had to do that over and over again to get through the whole thing. So I started building out the scenes of the film and finding music. I literally sketched out frames, and at one point I made a mock-up of some of the scenes to communicate the idea. So in Milanote, I started putting scenes together. So I would use boards to create different scenes, and then I would put a new scene. This allowed me to arrange my film the way that I wanted. I would put music into the boards so that I could hear it as I was looking at what was going on. I scripted everything. I literally planned the entire film right here. So this would help me like communicate to other people my ideas. It didn't work out very well because nobody understood it, but I had it all written down, and I basically planned everything from the beginning. So that it came out as close to what I thought it could be right from the beginning of the whole process. So when we actually started filming, we started with the interview to kind of get the story set. I knew that if I had a good interview and some of his iPhone footage from him running, I could at least make an interesting story. So we met up after we had quite a few pre-interview phone calls. So I had most of the story built in my mind, and on my notes, I had scripted out a bunch of questions and had a bunch in my, I have a red notebook that I wrote ideas down. So I left the location scouting up to Wyatt. We got our location through a work relationship that he had. So he was doing some woodworking for a co-working space, kind of like a friend of a friend situation. So looking online, I saw these pictures of this beautiful wall, and that was my plan to film right in front of it. So then we finally got there and met up, and it was a complete disaster. It was awful. The New York City Marathon fell through that exact same day, and he was supposed to run that weekend. We were filming on maybe a Sunday, and he was so distracted trying to figure it out. And also the location was way different than the pictures online because it was a co-working space. There was multiple branches, and we were looking at the wrong location. And we also didn't rent it out. So there were people walking all around. It was dark, and it was just super ugly for what I was going for. And so this was not good planning on my side. But we rolled with the punches and kind of made do with what we had for the night. We just chatted about the film a bit, but now I realize I should have actually been filming his experience of missing the application and missing the marathon, or almost missing the marathon, and then just gone home. I kind of wasted a good opportunity for some verite film coverage, so following him in the moment, and that's a bummer because that's one thing that this film didn't really have a whole lot of. It was mostly iPhone footage for verite, but that would have been really awesome to at least have that scene covered, or at least that idea covered in person, to ask him questions and stuff, but it's okay. So you live and learn. So we rescheduled and found the right location, the one that I had been expecting to film at, and we filmed about a week later. So this filming process was so amazing. It was honestly probably one of the best interviews that I've been able to be a part of. And it wasn't just good because of the emotion of it, but I had done some deeper research, and with the questions that I asked, I could see in real time that he was making some realizations about his life and his character that he had never really put together before. And that was super special to be able to see that, to be part of that process for him, especially in this film that I didn't really get to participate in the marathons. So being able to be there for such a important realization on his side was really, really awesome. So the lighting setup that I had for the day at the co-working space was kind of janky, but I'll save the actual lighting setup for another video if you guys are interested. It was pretty simple, but I will say that I made one mistake at the interview place besides taking forever. So we showed up because it was a week later, it was finally December, and there was a 15-foot Christmas tree exactly where I wanted Wyatt to sit. So we had to figure out moving that. And then there was this ball or gala or something literally across the glass door hallway. So all of their noise was coming through. And then there was this huge bank of windows on one side. And because we had taken so long moving the Christmas tree, the sun went down. So you can see, I'll show you during the interview, it started looking very teal and orange kind of look, but then at the end of it, it was just straight orange. The sun went down and there was no more light coming through. Thankfully, it was still really beautiful, and we had enough depth in the frame to kind of save my butt. But it was definitely a novice mistake on my side, but it still was really pretty, and I really loved the setup that we had there. At some point when I was talking to Wyatt about making this film, I knew he had no budget, so I wanted more of a creative director role to kind of steer our creative direction and end up with a project that I was really proud of, and that worked for me a little bit more. But at some point, or maybe it was just me, I think it was 8 months pregnant by this time, we we were having a bit of a disconnect about something in our conversations. So I could sense it, and I called Wyatt just to kind of make sure that we were okay. So at some point he was mentioning that maybe like we shouldn't go full out on this project, or kind of keeping this project a little more simple and a little less polished, I suppose, which wasn't really what I was going for. I didn't really want to, you know, dumb down the project. In the end, he was more worried about traction with his audience on Instagram. And I totally get that. So as I was hearing what he was talking about and some concerns that he had, so our initial timeline to put the film out was maybe over like this coming summer, so that we could have a bit more recreating and having it a bit more polished. But this conversation brought the timeline up from like summer in June to like December, which was crazy. I had 3 weeks from having the baby in December. So I wasn't really sure how that was gonna go, but because this was a major concern that he had, I figured we could simplify a few things and make it work. So we kept going. I filmed more B-roll at his house, all of those scenes, and I had to get the intro, the dream. I had this match cut that I was going to basically create. And then I needed more of his daily life scenes. But then when we were there, I spent way too much time doing this car mount rig that we literally did not use for anything. Although one of the experiments actually did save my life in the edit, because he was just holding his phone, or I think he propped it up on his dashboard. And we ended up using that in the final edit, which I was really glad that we had that. A few weeks later, I went back one more time to film with Nana, and the ending scene in his room teasing what his next adventure was, which was really awesome that it actually came true. The 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days was kind of just an idea at this point. And so then it ended up that that's literally where he is right now. Like, he just finished that project, which is pretty cool. So the next thing that we had to plan was getting the footage in Hawaii. So without going into too much detail, he hired a friend to film in Hawaii to fly out with him. I did my best to plan everything with him, to have some multiple conversations and try to get on the same footing of everything, but it didn't quite go as planned, so I kind of had to pivot later, but it was all okay. So after the challenge for Wyatt wrapped, my challenge began of wrangling all this footage as he was still running all over the place. I also had to get the Hawaii footage from the guy that filmed it. And I think there's a hard drive floating around in the Postal Service that will never end up on my computer. I don't know what happened to it, but it got lost somewhere in the ether. So I basically just had to count like half of the Hawaii footage as a loss and just kind of moved on as if I didn't know it existed. So while I was waiting for the footage, I started to lose motivation a little bit, and I got a little overwhelmed. I had the baby and the new year had started, but still I couldn't get all the footage. And so I took a week or so and just kind of let it drop. I really was planning on it just not happening anymore. I thought we wouldn't have anything and that we would have to shelve the project until maybe the summer. With everything going on, it was just too much. So at this time, Wyatt was planning toward his next challenge, and we thought about just releasing the interview as some kind of glorified podcast. So then I was just listening to a few podcasts about storytelling, and I got sparked with some new ideas and just got cruising in the edit. I sat down at my computer and just put everything down. And I was only aiming for like a 5-minute edit. I knew if I could just get a 5-minute something that was good, I had enough that even if it was super short, I could make something and finish the project. So I ended up finishing the rough draft within 3 weeks from the time that I got the footage that I needed to finishing the rough draft. So, and this was all editing in my free hours. So the kids' bedtime around, 7:30 or 8 till 10 or 11, and I had to just drop in bed, or early in the morning, or when the kids were napping or something like that. So I had to find a way to bring all of these pieces together. I had 16mm film, which I digitized myself last Christmas. Fun story. So my grandpa had traveled all over with his Bolex that I found last Christmas, and I spent all of December digitizing it. I bought a projector and watched all of it. And I was super excited to use his film in my own movie and thought it would fit perfectly, kind of to communicate Nana's travels, since I didn't really have anything of hers to work with. So I used a film theme to kind of bring everything together. There was a point and shoot camera that was used in Hawaii, my FX30, Wyatt's iPhone footage, the 16mm film. So there was a lot of pieces that I kind of used film as the theme to kind of wrap it all up and make it feel cohesive as a whole. So with the first rough draft, I had a few holes in it that I needed to fill. So I did an exit interview type of thing 3 weeks later or so with Wyatt over the phone in mid-January. I just recorded a phone call, and I was able to ask some questions, and he gave me some really good sound bites about the time that he lived in Hawaii for a month, which I had never heard before. Unfortunately, the audio was junk. Like, it had this really weird digital interference noise to it. And I thought I was gonna have to somehow redo it, which would have felt really rough, I think. But thankfully, I could send it through Adobe Podcast AI, and it cleaned up all this like digital noise, and you can hardly tell. I mean, I can tell where it was supposed to be because, you know, I filmed it, but it did a really great job, and especially under all the layers.
When I first dropped out of college, I wanted to do something. I was like, all right, I need to get out of my house. Flights to Hawaii were really cheap. When I first dropped out of college, I wanted to do something. I was like, all right, I need to get out of my house. Flights to Hawaii were really cheap.
So to end, I'll say this. I am just a normal mom who wanted to make a movie. And if I can do it, anyone who wants to do it is able. I had all of these excuses to stop me, but I finished it, and I'm really proud of it. So if you're interested in following my journey in filmmaking, I'd love to have you subscribe. Maybe if I get like 500 subscribers, I'll actually make a YouTube studio instead of filming in my kitchen. But I would also love to hear what projects you're working on. If you want feedback or encouragement as you go through and pursue your ideas, go ahead and leave me a comment and we can connect. I would love to encourage you. Yeah, okay, that's all. Bye.